And part of the concern about the state of the nation was the president's whereabouts. But we can now tell you that the president has returned from his trip to the Netherlands. This has been confirmed by one of his aides, Mr. Bayo Ononuga. Of course, we're also getting that confirmation from the Twitter handle of one of the nation's national television channels. The president has returned to Abuja after his trip to the Netherlands and Saudi Arabia. And as we continue to reflect on the current state of the nation, we have joining us for this next bit of the conversation, lawyer and public affairs analyst, Mr. Daniel Bwala, who joins us via Zoom. Mr. Bwala, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
And there's so much to talk about, Mr. Bwala. Of course, the cybersecurity levy, the continuing petrol scarcity, the electricity tariff. Some people are saying, not some people, it's a consensus view now that it appears the administration is scoring very low on sensitivity amid, the difficulty that Nigerians are already grappling with. How do you weigh in on this, Mr. Bwala?
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning to your viewers. Depends on who is assessing and what is the motive behind the assessment. Just like you have a water in the bottle, and somebody will say it's half full, someone will say it's half empty. But what generally we should be looking at are numbers, right? And looking at also the context and perspective from which we look at things. Nobody, I think, is in doubt of the fact that when the president took that hard decision, which is a necessary decision, is not a convenient decision, that there must be a temporal hardship. There must be a period like a period of childbirth. There must be a period of inconveniences. There must be a period of personal sacrifices. When you are confronted by a period like that, what is required of you is adjustment, because they say trouble don't last always. You will not be in that situation forever, but you will need to adjust. Because if, for example, you had a very good income coming to you, you have a lifestyle where you travel with your family on vacation every 3 months, you buy them choice food, you go to places and the rest, and suddenly you are told that this means by which the monies are coming are not going to last, they are irregular. Now you have to go by the books. You're going to have to adjust, and this is the basis of life. So I don't think the president is denying the fact that this is a period in Nigerians' life, in the life of the Nigerian people, where things are hard. He has said it over and over and over again. And what he has been enjoining the Nigerian people to do is to have faith in the government, believe in what we're going through, play your part where necessary, and let us move forward. Now, you have seen on many policy decisions of the government where even the masses, some of them, not all, take advantage of the situation and try to deprive other Nigerians of what would ordinarily be their benefit. We have seen that in price hike and in a lot of things. So I want to say, with respect to this, your question in a nutshell, it is not a hardship that anybody in Nigeria is in denial. But the promise is that the policies that are put in place in the long run will work for the good of Nigeria. And from when the policies were introduced, we have seen improvement, at least in the area of revenue, increased revenue, which has led to now the redistribution of this wealth across the states of the federation and local government. And the states have experienced what I naturally would call oil boom. Now it's up to them at their state level to also deploy these monies to alleviate the sufferings of their people.
Mr. Bwala, I like to call you an independent, so that that's the way you say we should describe it, because sometimes it's difficult given all the background and all of that. But your perspectives are always quite insightful, which is why I want to speak to the issue of the president's whereabouts that you spoke about, and you referred us to Section 5. There's been argument over whether or not where can he administer things from. You said, according to Section 5, he can administer from anywhere, or that power can be transferred to any of his lieutenants, whether it's vice president and all of that. But the argument Nigerians are having, which is why we need your legal insight on this, is not that the president cannot administer the country from anywhere. It's just the fact that nobody knew where he was as citizens. He says may have known it. His aide did not vote him. Every Nigerian, as far as after the election is concerned, is now our president. We deserve to know where he is per time. Is that too much to ask?
No, not at all. Every citizen has every right to ask of the whereabouts of a public official, not just the president, public official. And they also deserve the right to know. So let me, right off the cuff, say that the asking of the whereabouts of the president is not a challenge. Nigerians have not done bad by asking. And I think also that the presidency made clear at that time, after his trip to Netherlands and Saudi, that he went to Europe. So Europe was where he was before he came, or he's on his way back to the country. And I think that he's in Europe is sufficient for Nigerians to know where he went to. If they want to know the nitty-gritties of where in the Europe, this is what the presidency will unveil to the Nigerians or release to the Nigerians with time. But let me give a context to why I said what I said on Twitter, and a lot of people try to misconceive, because what they try to do is they look at the history and juxtapose what I said. And they tend to think that because of history, we should be afraid of the law and the realities of the moment. And context is important because context matters. Somebody said that the president of Nigeria presently is outside of the country, and that because of that, the president is not in charge of the government, and that the Nigerian people are now left at the mercy of cabals. This was a television house that was analyzing it. And so a journalist called me later and then asked of my perspective. I said, well, I know you guys sometimes can misinterpret. I'll put out a tweet. You can write a story based on it so that if you deviate, at least I know my tweet that anybody can see. And then in that tweet, I said that the president is in charge of the country, he can govern from anywhere in the world. Now look at Section 5. Section 5 says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, the executive powers of the Federation is vested in the president, and subject to the provision of the law, he can discharge the functions of that office either by himself or through the vice president and the ministers of the government of the Federation, or through the heads of the public service. This is the scope of the powers of the president. So what that means is that president may not be presently in Nigeria. He can be in Antarctica. But these agents of government that the Constitution gave them the privilege to carry out the functions of the president on his directive, when they are carrying out those functions, the president is in charge. If you proceed further to Section 130 of the Constitution, you will see where it says, there shall be a federation, right? There shall be a president for the federation. If you go down, it says that the president shall be the head of state, chief executive officer, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. This is the scope of the powers. Now, whenever the president who has taken the oath of office during the pendency of the term as president is wherever he is in the world, as long as that president can communicate with the agents that I outlined or I mentioned here to carry out the duties, and that the president has not relocated, and that his travel does not exceed 21 days, that president is in charge of the country. That president can govern the country, and that president is in order. Because the president, apart from being the president, is also the chief marketer of the federation. And so some of the trips are official, some of the trips are private. Whether they be official or they be private, the president's power and charge and governance authority does not get extinguished because of geography. Because somebody said he's not in the villa. You remember that COVID gave us a very good perspective of understanding adaptation with changing times. Until after the COVID, we learned what they call, Zoom meeting, remote meetings, remote assignments. I am in England, but I run my law firm. So,
Mr. Bwala, just to put, the reason was because the presidency never put out an information to the best of our knowledge as to where he will be after his visit to Saudi. We knew he was going to Netherlands and also to Saudi Arabia, but the confusion came because there was, sometimes they say from here he will proceed here, but we didn't get that clarity. I think what we got the information of him going to Europe was just this outcry that we now had a release yesterday. Kayode.
Well, essentially, that's the question, really, Mr. Bwala. If we say that Nigerians employed the president, and President Tinubu has been described as a Democrat, true and true, and a lot of people leaned on that and said, you know what, we're going to follow through because we believe he's a Democrat. This was something they complained about during, the military era. In fact, it was complained about during former President Muhammadu Buhari as well. And people say, okay, maybe the military angle to it. So President Tinubu came and they thought things would be different. An employee will not go out of station for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days without the employer knowing where the employee is. Mr. Bwala.
You're right. But the difference is that the president is not an employee, because Section 130 said there shall be for the federation a president, someone who presides over the federation. I know your context might be because the Nigerian people voted him, therefore he's an employee to Nigerians. Perfect. In that context, I agree with you. But you see, the president will not, for example, be carrying out individual requests of the Nigerian people. He will carry out the request of Nigerian people that is circumscribed in the Constitution, because he is a president whose duty is to protect and execute the Constitution of Nigeria and carry out other functions for which the duties of his office permit. There are certain duties of the president that cannot be delegated. For example, when the president has to present the budget to the National Assembly or wants to address the National Assembly on the State of the Union, he has to do that himself. That when the president, for example, wants to carry out certain functions that are related to the commander-in-chief of the armed forces with the armed forces, he has to do that by himself. When the president has to declare war in another country, he has to do that by himself. And if he is going to allow his vice, then he would have transmitted the power, and then the vice can have the same power to be able to function. The president was away for a few days. So I am happy that you're understanding my context, because if context is not given to the reason why I put what I put out, people can give misinterpretation. And media houses have correspondents in the villa. So if, for example, you look at the official channel by which the government announced the movement of the president and you do not see, or there is ambiguity, I think that media houses can ask their correspondents in the villa to directly contact them and get to know where is the president, where is he proceeding.
So, Mr. Bwala, quickly, let me follow up on that so also we can do full disclosure. In fact, some of the aides were reached out to, messages didn't deliver, calls didn't ring through. That's on the one hand. When you say that the president is not an employee, he is. In fact, I will just quote what the president said when he was taking the job. He said, "I asked for the job." That's what the president said. So president implying that I am what your employee. I asked for the job, and that's when he now said, "Don't pity me." I'm sure you remember that statement. So to that, you've given the context which you made that statement, which is good. And you've also said that the Nigerians deserve to know, but I wanted to just put it clear that the president himself agrees that he's an employee. He says, "I asked for the job."
Let me tell you, I am sure that you do not have enough time for us to delve deep in that. You see, an employee is employed by the employer at the pleasure of the employer. There are procedures for the recruitment, and there are terms of reference. Do you know that there are demographics in the country that don't believe the president is their president, and they control the cyberspace and threaten people's life? To them, the president is not someone they employed. Two, an employee in an organization is bound by the terms of reference and from time to time reviewed by the employer. And the employee is entitled to salary. There are certain distinctive characteristics of employee that may not be applied when it comes to the presidency of the country. For example, the president will not ask the Nigerian people, do I sign this official engagement between Nigeria and another country, or do I travel and the rest? But in the case of an employee, you can't travel until you ask for permission. President only needs to let you know he has traveled. That's why I try to make a distinction with the concept of employer-employee. But the president is accountable to Nigerians, which is much more than just being an employee. And communication strategy differ with people. I do not think that the communication handlers of the president should keep away the information necessary for the Nigerian people about the whereabouts of the president. You may not go to the details of his whereabouts. For example, suffice to say the president, after conducting official visit in Netherlands and Saudi Arabia, has proceeded for a private trip in so and so place. Private trip is private. The president will not tell you I ate amala in the morning, I ate eba in the evening. But the president is entitled to certain privacy to say he has traveled for a private visit. What we as the Nigerian people are looking at is the law. While he moved on the private visit, is any of his conduct and activities violating the provision of the law? The law says, unless if the journey exceeds 21 days in a stretch. And you remember, 21 days in a stretch excludes official duty. Because if you look at section 145 or 46, it says only when you are proceeding on vacation or that you are unable to perform the discharge of your duties, that is when 21 days apply. But if the president is on official duty, and that official duty connotes him going to 100 countries, and it will last for 9 months, are you suggesting that during this period of the official duty, the president has ceased to be in charge or ceased to be the president of a country? The president is the chief marketer in any organization where you have a marketer. If you look at the bank, for example, and be advised by that, you discover that certain rules are different with marketers and those people in customer service, because the marketers are believed to be people who should be fluid enough to move around for the purposes of bringing customers that will keep the progress and growth of the organization.
Well, Mr. Bwala, for the duration of travel of Mr. President, it doesn't cease to be the president, but his itinerary, Nigerians deserve to be furnished with his itinerary for the duration of travel and know where he is at a material time.
I agree with you.
But let's switch to another subject as far as the state of the nation is concerned, which is the Lagos Calabar Coastal Project. If you consider the flurry of reactions or the nature of reactions to that project, the middle name may just be controversy, one of which is coming from former vice president and candidate of the PDP, your former party, who says the president's son may be on the board of the firm that has secured the contract. And we know that the owner of the firm is the president's associate. Although we've had the Minister of Works come to clarify the bidding process and the hurried nature which this contract is being implemented, this infrastructure is being implemented. But why don't we see the same zeal for other federal roads? For instance, the failed federal roads in Edo State, for which the governor has gone on a back and forth with the federal government. Why don't we see the zeal also for roads like the East-West Road? If the expertise of high-tech is what is being considered for Lagos Coastal Road, the expertise of high-tech is also needed for areas that are challenged with ocean surges, like Ilaje communities in Ondo State, for instance. So why don't we see this same zeal and hurried nature deployed to roads that are begging for attention in Nigeria?
For example, with respect to what you said, you see, this necessity of the road is only unimportant to somebody who does not come from these coastal states. But anybody who comes from a state where this infrastructure will run through, to them, there is no priority greater than that. When it comes to needs in the country, there is no part of the country or segment of the country that is not calling for one need or the other. 3, if you are making a case that high-tech should also be awarded contract in other routes and the rest, you are welcome to make a case for them. And they can get as much as they can get if they win on the basis of practice and procedure. Mentioning, for example, the son of the president as being a member of the board, we're just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. Sheyi Tinubu is not a public officer. If you look at the public officers law that govern, it is a public officer who must not allow conflict of interest, who must disclose his asset, who must do A, B, and C. Sheyi is a private citizen like you in that studio. If the law of your organization permits for you to be involved in a company, there is nothing wrong in you being involved in a company that end up winning a bid or end up winning a contract with the government. Mr.
Bwala, pardon me if I may come in there. You say the president's son is a private citizen, but wouldn't that be an element of nepotism in that in the award of that contract, if you consider that it's public infrastructure?
No, it is not, and that is where accountability comes. So he who alleges must prove. If you believe that there is nepotism in the award of contract because the son of the president is a board member, you are to furnish facts that will support that. You see, we're living in a time where even conjecture can read. And I want to believe that we should not get to a point as a country where we vilify children of public officers just because they are children of public officers. When somebody raised that issue, a journalist raised that issue with me, I say, Sheyi is not a minor. By every law in Nigeria, Sheyi can as well take up arms, join the Nigerian army, and go to war. And the fact that his father is a business does not take away his own personal pursuit of peace and happiness in life and in business. And we copy this democracy from the advanced countries. I hope you know when Donald Trump was president, his children, his in-laws, and everybody was involved in his government. It was argued by CNN and Fox. And at the end of the day, the conclusion was that where you determine conflict of interest is if you can show that the person wins this or wins that because there was an influence of social and social person in the process or in the securing of that job. Has anybody, the setup or whatever is the organization, been able to show that the reason why High-Tech got the job is because Sheyi influenced it? Nobody has been able to show it. So should Sheyi now resign from the board of the organization because that company got the job? Sheyi is not a public officer.
All right, so
now,
I guess.
Let me say this. Allow me. Let me say this.
Okay.
The former vice president is somebody I respect with the deepest respect, and all the effort that people made to ensure that they bring our heads together failed, including the skewing of information around what I tweeted about the president. But I recall that the former vice president, in the build-up to the 2019 election, when he was asked that if he got the chance to privatize, will he privatize there are certain institutions of government to his press? He said, why not? If they meet the requirement.
Wow.
All right, we can go on and on about the issue of Sheyi, but I guess the fact that I think it's stronger, the stronger issue is the fact that the president has a good relationship with Mr. Gilbert Chagori. Of course, you know the COP28 issue that caused all the wahala that we saw him as a confidant in that particular conference. But I understand we don't have so much time. I wanted you to speak to but if you can do it in 30 seconds, I don't mind. The numbers are all up. Headline inflation between when he took over and now is over 10%. Food inflation is over 15%. Whatever you look, the numbers are in the red. How much hope do you think this government is giving? 30 seconds, Mr. Bwala.
Yes, I believe that the inflation rising or falling is predictable based on decisions of government and the reform that the government is undertaking. I have not seen any reform in the world that is convenient, like I told you from the beginning. And nobody is celebrating hardship. Nobody is celebrating the pains that the Nigerian people are going through. The promise, like you asked, the hope, the promise is that the policies are working. And the president is about to enter the second year of his administration. Remember, his government is for 4 years. I want to tell the Nigerian people on my own honor that the president's reform will work for the good of Nigerians in the long run.
Well, Mr. Bwala, we could continue to, come up with follow-up questions on some of these issues that you have raised, but we're totally out of time. We'd like to thank you very much for your time on the program and for always answering our call whenever we require you to speak to these issues. Mr. Daniel Bwala is a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for coming on the morning brief.
And an independent.
Maybe add to that a smooth operator as well.
An independent.
I mean, you just see the operation is quite smooth.
Bwala makes it easy. Sometimes difficult to introduce him, but that's why I like to stick with independent and the legal practitioner. So.
Well, we just hope that doesn't change in the coming months. Mr. Bwala will be willing to come answer more questions if it changes.
But thank you always, as always. We thank you.
All right. So that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let's remind you that the president is back in the country after his trip to the Netherlands and Saudi Arabia. And we're back again tomorrow with more. I am Bwala Koka.
Thank you so much. He's back from Europe, precisely. He's done with Netherlands, Saudi Arabia. He's back from Europe. Thank you for watching. I'm Jeffrey Zongo.
It's important to clear that. And I'm Kayode Kikulu. Have a great day ahead. Sunrise Daily is next. Stay with Channels Television for all of the breaking news you need. Goodbye.